Good morning, Kingdom Builders. Day 15. We're at the halfway mark of our 30-day challenge, and this is all about the art of allowing. What happens when you completely trust, surrender, submit, and just allow life, allow God to just take God's rightful place in your life? The events that unfold, the people that show up, the things that happen, just allowing and submitting. And not trying to force things, not trying to make things work out for you, but allowing things to work out for you. That's what this challenge is all about. So if you're joining us for the first time, welcome. Today's day 15. And today we're going to talk about the voice behind the numbers. And this one is going to appeal to anybody who deals with numbers on a business level, personal level. If you're in charge of a business, if you have your own business, maybe you can relate to this. And I'm going to share a personal story. Yesterday, I had a realization. I had this morning actually as well, we had to do payroll. And I've got a bunch of guys. And after I did payroll for the company, after I approved everything, I noticed there wasn't a lot of money left. In fact, there isn't a lot of money today to make next week's payroll. And immediately that voice started talking. And it started saying all kinds of things. What if next week is worse? What if this doesn't get better? What if we don't recover? What if this is the beginning of the end? And in that moment, that's when I realized something that I've always known. Well, not always, but I realized in this challenge, and the suffering that I was experiencing, it wasn't coming from the bank account. It was coming from the voice, me listening to the voice, me negotiating with that voice. And that's where the suffering comes from for a lot of us. I had a conversation this morning with someone who also runs a very successful business, and money is not their issue. But in the course of the conversation, they expressed that organization was their issue. In fact, I've had numerous conversations with business owners, and I hear the same thing. Fear, pressure, mental noise. And you think, looking at these people, that money has solved all their problems. And he even asked me, I shared some of my challenge with him, and he asked me if money would solve my problems. And I realized at that point, it's not money. It's spending your life in a state of believing that voice is similar to spending your life not trusting. Because most people believe, well, if I make 100,000, if I make $1 million, I'll be okay. But guess what? That voice is still there. The voice is still there. If I pay off my house, if I do that voice is always going to be there unless you deal with it. Because the voice is not attached to the numbers. The voice is attached to the uncertainty. The voice that I was hearing yesterday, if everything was quote unquote okay, it wouldn't be talking as loud. But it's talking because it's uncertain. We don't know what tomorrow is going to bring. I don't know how I'm going to make payroll. I don't know how I'm going to pay the bills. And that's scary for that part of my brain that's unfamiliar with that. It's scary if you trust yourself. But when we fully submit and we say, I don't know how, but I'm not supposed to. There is nowhere in the Bible that says you are supposed to know how it's going to work out. In fact, throughout my life, I've seen that the way that I've tried to orchestrate it, it usually never works out that way. And so that's part of our practice, is allow it to work out, because it will. It will work out. But guess what? Our minds, we want guarantees. We want certainty. We want control. We want proof that it's going to work out. I need to know that there's somebody that's going to give me 100,000 to bail me out of this, or 1,000,000. I want tomorrow's answers today. I want tomorrow's daily bread. And we see this in scripture as well. They wanted to save that bread for tomorrow so they wouldn't have to rely on God. And in my life, I'm looking and saying, I want the assurance of next payroll today so I don't have to trust God. I want the assurance of having surplus money in my account so I don't have to trust God. And Jesus addresses this directly. And we keep repeating this same verse. He says, take no thought for tomorrow, for tomorrow shall take thought for the things of itself. And let's think about that. Jesus wasn't talking to poor people. He was speaking to rich people, to humans. Because the problem is not money. It's the thought and the addiction around certainty. And it's all about control. And that's why we're allowing. Because we're submitting to something that's bigger than us, that knows better than us, and that has always worked it out. The rich man worries about losing what he has. The poor man worries about gaining what he doesn't have. Different circumstances, opposite circumstances, but the same suffering. And I believe the kingdom, when we seek the kingdom first, it's an invitation into something that's completely different than this attachment to outcomes. It's trust. Not trust when everything looks good. Trust when there's uncertainty, when the account is low, when the business is slow, when the answer hasn't arrived, when the account is plentiful, when you just need organization. Trust. Even in the little things. When you can't see the way out of the future. And there's a different aspect of trust when you're at the top. Because so many people who are at the top, they fear falling back to where they came from. And then there's another category of people who are at the top that they fear what the money will do to them. And so they don't ever feel comfortable spending it, investing it. And faith says, I'm a trusted steward. Faith says, if God trusts me, I can trust me. Allowing requires us to stay in that position of uncertainty without allowing fear to overwhelm us and become our master. And the truth is, I don't know if I'm even afraid of being broke. I think I'm more afraid of the emotions that I imagine being broke would create. Because if you trust God, I trust God. I know that if worst case I do get to that level, God has given me skills that would allow me to get back up. And when we look deeply, the things that we fear are really uncertainty, just not knowing, not having control. If I knew that the payroll would be made in 2 weeks, I wouldn't have that feeling. That voice wouldn't be talking. It wouldn't have a seat at the table. And I want to tell you, listener, every uncertainty that you've had in the past, you've survived it. And maybe you even thrived and overcame in a way that you never expected. The situations might have changed. The fears might have changed. The numbers could be different than my numbers. But you're here, still breathing, still moving, still growing. I know people who have gone through bankruptcies, divorces, all kinds of things that would break most people. And they're still here. But yet the mind keeps saying, well, what if it doesn't work? What if they don't do it this time? And the reality of it is the opposite keeps happening. It always works out somehow. And so maybe the lesson is not learning how to control better, but the lesson is learning how to trust better. Like Jesus said, the birds don't know where their next meal is coming from. The trees don't know when the rain is going to come. But nature allows. Nature trusts. Nature receives. And maybe that's why Jesus kept pointing us to nature so often, to that other creation, to the birds. We can participate in this thing called life and live in a joyous state. We can live without resistance. We can live on empty and be full. Think about that. That's going to hit a little different. We can live on empty and be full. What did the story of the Israelites that we read about, they didn't know where their next meal was coming from. But they trusted that it would be provided every single day. And today I want you to ask yourself, if everything disappeared, who would I be? Is my identity tied to my business, to my family? If the titles, CEO, manager, architect, if that disappeared, who would I be? Who's left? If all the accolades, everything I've done, all the properties I've bought, all the cars I've taken, all the trips, all the vacations, if everything disappeared, who would remain? Because true peace can't come from something that can be taken away. I think true peace comes from discovering what's left when everything else changes. When you got nothing. You hear about prisoners who have peace, who find peace. When people say they find Jesus, what does that mean? It doesn't mean they found religion. It means they found something that's deeper than what the world can offer. And our accounts can come up, they can go down. You can literally be a millionaire, a billionaire tomorrow. But that identity is not found in your account. Your identity is found in something deeper. And that's where your peace is found as well. So today, and I'm speaking to myself as I'm sharing this with you, let's allow the account to show what it says, but we need to take control of what's going on in our head.